Okay, so we were talking about the Vaibhava. We got him push on here. And of course we do so with great joy. Vaibhava, the place at the starting point before we went off topic, was that Vaibhava means Aishwarya, and I was saying that the real Aishwarya is Madhurya. The highest thing is not the Aishwarya, but the highest thing is the Madhurya. So this means that we're putting things on. This is like we've gone full circle. It's like you're going full circle, because you start spiritual life. You start spiritual life by looking for the highest thing, and then somehow or another you come around and you see that the intimacy, love, these things are really the highest thing. And when you see when you can bring the two together, because if you don't, then the love and so on becomes prakrita, becomes mundane, becomes material. What is the point? Loving with attachment, with material attachment, self, with ahankar, abhiman, and so on. So what we have to do is we have to understand the lila of Vrindavan. We have to understand the selfless love of Vrindavan. And when we understand the selfless love of Vrindavan, it can manifest it in our lives. And that's what the perfection is. Not that we're Aishwarya. As soon as you talk about Aishwarya, you're talking about Vaidhi Bhakti. As soon as you talk about God making orders and commands and so on, then immediately we're in as soon as you're in the sense of obligation, the obligation that comes from being in a position, in a subsidiary position. I'm a tiny jiva, God is so great, therefore I have to follow God's orders. I have to. Already there's a defect, there's even a logical defect in that. Because it puts God on a platform where he's what does God need with me for that I should follow His orders? There's a logical, the logical defect is there. The real thing is that, we say that God wants our love. Well, you may say, why does God want our love? Because, how can you argue with that? Of course God wants our love. Everybody wants love. Everybody wants to experience love. Everybody wants to give love. Everybody wants to experience love. So since that is the essence of our being, you could say, it's a psychological truth. We don't recognize it necessarily because our desires become corrupted, and so we want fame, we want music, we want money, we want success, all these things. We want Aishwarya, and so we attribute Aishwarya to God. Right? But actually, if we look at if we analyze the human psychology, the real thing is that is to experience love. The only trouble is that because we're self-centered, we want love to come to us. We want to be the Vishaya, and we don't know how to be Ashraya. So if we learn how to be Ashraya, that means to be a devotee. That means to learn to be a lover. Right? To be a devotee means to learn to be a lover. And if you want to be loved, then become a devotee, because a devotee is worthy of loving. A devotee has the character. When we talk about 26 qualities of a devotee, what are the 26 qualities of a devotee? Those are qualities that make a person lovable. You want to be loved, become a devotee. Then you'll have the qualities and everybody will love you. Nobody loves an arrogant person, but humble people everybody likes. Nobody likes someone who's intolerant. A tolerant person everybody likes. Yeah? Nobody likes a person who always wants to be glorified. But if someone is always glorifying others, everybody likes them. Right? So it's not a question of artificially trying to, like Dale Carnegie there with How to Win Friends and Influence People. But one of the first things I noticed when I read that Dale Carnegie's book, because I'd already come back, first time I read that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, I've been a devotee for 15 years. So I thought, my God, he's just talking about being a Vaishnava. He's talking, if you want to make friends and influence people, be a devotee. Yeah? Because he's talking that these are the qualities of a person that you would expect. This is the way that a devotee should cultivate his personal character. So we want to be loved, but the most important part of being lovable is to learn how to love yourself. And that's the essence of a bhakta. Because a bhakta is learning how to love. A bhakta is learning to love God, and through loving God, learning how to love all creatures, to love all beings, to love everything as being manifestations of God. So this is already outside the realm of Aishwarya. This is already, we're in the realm of Madhurya. So the Vaibhava, so this is really what he's talking about here. In this thing, this idea that Paramadbhuta Vaibhava, the Paramadbhuta Vaibhava, so Param, the supreme and the most astonishing Vaibhava, the most astonishing Vaibhava, the most astonishing Aishwarya, the most astonishing opulence or majesty that is present in Radha is Adbhut and Paramadbhut. Adbhut means rasa. The Adbhut will mean rasa. Yes, of course, it's always adbhut when we see people doing magnificent things. There's no doubt about that. So that is also rasa. But the paramadbhut, the supreme adbhut, the most wonderful and most rasic thing is in prem. And in Radha, that prem is because she has come to the point where Krishna is under her control. By saying Krishna, it means actually the entire world is at her disposition. It means that everything, Krishna is everything, so everything is at her disposition. She has everything, right? She's the girl who has everything. All right. So now he's arguing this. So he's making this. He's been explaining here. He's saying and so I was wondering yesterday exactly what he was meaning, and I'm still not quite sure, but. So Brahmeshwaradya Pekshaya, so he's Radharani's Vaibhav is the Paramadbhut Vaibhava. So now he's saying that he's trying to discuss these three words. So he says that for Brahma and Ishvara, for all these, for Lord Brahma and for Maheshwara and the Sanatan and Sanaka and Narada and all the rest, that Radharani's as compared to them, Radharani is all three, Paramadbhuta Vaibhava. And then we were already, those things were. And for the gopis, he says that mostly the question is the Adbhut, that Radharani is more wonderful or more rasika than the other gopis. And then Sri Krishna Apeksha Vaibhavattvamiti. So that more than Krishna, the opulence or the glory is greater than even in Krishna. So now he gives the reason. Kincha, Sri Krishnasya Parama Rasikatvena. I love this word, Rasika. Parama Rasika. So Krishna is the supreme Rasika. Everything is being measured in terms of Rasika, being a Rasika. So Krishna is the Parama Rasika. So Sri Krishnasya Parama Rasikatvena Shiro Dharja Paragatvat Priyayach Sobhagyadikyam iti Vaibhavam. So now he's explaining the word Vaibhavam. So the Vaibhavam, the glory, is in her Sobhagya. So Sobhagya here, the word Sobhagya means good fortune. Right? Sobhagya means good fortune. Sometimes you have that word Sohagini in Hindi, and it's not a Sanskrit word, Sohagini. You hear that. So often a bride is called Sohagini. And Radharani is sometimes called Shyama Sohagini. You may hear that word in Vrindavan. Shyama Sohagini. So Sohagini is a corruption of Sobhagini, that she's a good fortune. Because it comes from the idea that the wife or the woman brings good fortune to the man. Right? When you say that Lakshmi comes into the house, when a man in India, when a man gets married, then it's like Lakshmi Devi is coming into the house. So she's Sobhagya, she's bringing good fortune. She's bringing good fortune to the husband, and she's bringing good fortune to the whole family. Right? So it says that Radharan, so the Vaibhava, the opulence or the glory or the majesty of Radha is in her great good fortune. So what is her fortune? It says that Sobhagyadikyam, greater good fortune. Radharani's greater good fortune lies in the fact that Krishna, who is the supreme Rasika, he wants to take the dust of her feet on his head. So we've been talking about this already. This is really our kind of our Mul Sutra, right? Taken from the Gita Govinda. This is our Mul Sutra that Krishna wants to take. That Krishna is bowing down to Radha, accepting Radha as his guru. That's also there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita from Govinda Lilamrita. When Radharani asks, one of the Sakhi, Vrinda Devi, says, "Where are you coming from, Vrinda Devi?" He says, "I'm coming from your Kunda, from Radha Kunda." I would say, "What were you doing there?" Krishna is there. What was Krishna doing? Oh, he's learning how to dance. You translated this one. Krishna is learning how to dance. Well, who's he learning from? From you. You're his guru. He's learning from you. How is he? I'm over here and he's over there. How's he learning from me? Because he sees you everywhere and he's dancing around trying to follow these hallucinations he's having of you everywhere. He's running, looking for you behind the trees and in the bushes, amongst the flowers, hearing you with the birds, so on. So that's the kind of a funny way of saying but presenting the idea that really Radharani is teaching Krishna about prema. That's why that's why he has to become Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in order to learn about prema. Yeah.
I have a question. How come Krishna would need our love if he seems so fulfilled with loving Radha? So why would it matter to him?
Well, that's that. In order to understand that, you have to understand about Sakhi Tattva. You have to understand what it means to be a manjari. So the idea is not that. The idea is not so much that. The idea is not so much that that it's our love, in that sense. Of course, it is, but we're the idea is that we're participating in that love. So we the idea is that by having playing a role and participating, you enhance. What we're doing is we're engaged in enhancing that lila. But it's a bit. It takes a. I don't know if I can explain it in a short while. Maybe over the time as we go on, the explanation will become clear. I hope you don't mind me brushing you off. I think I'm brushing you off.
You've talked about that before.
Because it's not exactly that. Because after all, the tattva still remains the same. We are still jivas. We're still tiny fragments of consciousness. We're not the whole thing. So yes, you're right. That's why we become dasis of Radha instead of trying to compete with Radha. We're not going to think. We don't think that this is in most religions, and even in Hinduism. You have, let's say, for instance, Mirabai. This is the big discussion about Mirabai. So Mirabai has written many beautiful poetries about love for Krishna, but at the same time, we don't. And you can, by all means, sing Mirabai's songs. There's nothing wrong. There's some of them are most beautiful. I love them. She's taking from a position of, and actually most, Vidyapati and Chandidas and so on, they are channeling the sentiments of Radha. So in a way, you could say that Radha is reflected in the songs of Mirabai. It's not that she, but because she doesn't glorify Radha, therefore somehow or another, directly experience Radha Bhakti through her, and that's why they say that it's a limitation. But we don't. But we say that she's trying. That in some way she's maybe competing with Radha, or she thinks that she's equal to Radha, or she thinks that she is Radha, and that those things are not tasteful to us as Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So we don't want to compete with Radha. That's what's the point of competing with Radha? If Chandravali, if Chandravali is it says in the beginning of Ujjwal Nilmani that of all the devotees and all the gopis, there are two who are greatest. One is Chandravali and one is Radha. But Tayor Apyuhayor Madhye Radhika Sarvatadika. It says that of the two of them, Radharani in all respects is supreme, is superior. So even Chandravali has no... It was interesting, I did some research in just the historical thing, scholarly business here, that Chandravali in old texts, because Chandravali doesn't exist as a separate person in texts older than the 15th or 16th century. Right? So in the texts of the 14th and 15th century, Radharani is called Chandravali. That's one of her names. So Chandravali and Radha are the same person. So then Chandravali and Radha are the same person.
Yes,
and then they get separated out. They get split up. So where they get split up? They get split up at this, I don't know if it's Rupa Goswami himself who does that, but certainly prior to Rupa Goswami, I don't see any evidence that there's Chandravali and Radharani are they're the same person. And then you get, and then he separates them out in order to separate out the two kinds of character that are there, so that that Radharani's Vamatva and Chandravali's Dakshinatva, Radharani's more aggressive approach to love, and Chandravali's rather more submissive approach to love, and to draw a distinction between those two. Because in some of those, like for instance in Sri Krishna Kirtan, which of all the Leela books, you see, and you have of course Gita Govinda, and you have Siddhanta is coming from Bhagavatam, but then in the folk tradition, there's a huge folk tradition that doesn't come in Sanskrit, and the most important one of those is Chandidas. So Chandidas wrote a book called Sri Krishna, or didn't write a book, but he was a performer, and he would sing a kirtan. So he very, very, he wrote quite a substantial book, which he would perform of songs about Radha and Krishna Leela. So in that, Radharani starts out as a 10-11-year-old girl, and go on it covers a period of about 5 years before Krishna goes away to Mathura. It's a very, very interesting book, because it tells us. So, but those leelas that are in that book, those leelas, those are the ones really that are being taken, and Rupa Goswami is using that as a source for a lot of his material, of his leela material. Of course, a lot of original in Rupa Goswami as well. Okay, I've got to move on here. Try to do a little bit more. I'm sorry, I'm a bit off topic today. Sometimes it happens. So sadyo vashikarana churnam iti bhakshati eva. So we've already discussed that Radharani's, the dust of Radharani's lotus feet is like the magic powder that, like the love potion, the magic love potion that brings Krishna under her control. So then gopi drishtya, so from the point of view of the gopis, adbhutatvam, so the marvelous nature, or the adbhut, we're talking about paramadbhuta vaibhava. So the vaibhava, she was saying here that Krishna is taking shelter of her, or wanting the dust of her feet. That is the glory of the Radharani's glory. And now the amazing thing from the point of view of the gopis is that Oho Sobhagyam Krishnopyevam. So when the gopis see Radharani's good fortune, so we're saying that Vaibhava is the good fortune, then the gopis, they think, look at this, right? Look at her good fortune, look at how glorious Radha is. They're the ones who are amazed, because Krishnopyevam, Krishna is behaving like this. Krishna is submissive to her. Krishna has become submissive to Radharani because of the power of her love. So the power of her love, that's the opulence. That's the power, that's the Aishwarya. So Aho Sobhagyam Krishnopyevam iti tatascha, and then iti. Gotta put these, got a pen somewhere? Just give me a pen so I can just put it in there. So that one of the big problems with Sanskrit is there's no punctuation. Not proper punctuation doesn't exist. And now when we do Sanskrit texts, when I do the Sanskrit text for the Grantha Mandir, then I put punctuation in. I put commas in, I put dashes in and things like that, because Sanskrit doesn't have that. And very few, some of the texts do now, so they start putting it in, quotation marks and things like that. But if you look at a manuscript, it drives you crazy. They don't even separate the words. So tatascha brahmadina tu kaimutyena paramadbhutatvamiti. So he says, so if you look from the point of view of Lord Brahma and the others, then what's the question? The adbhut, the vaibhava is in Radha, the adbhuta is in the gopis, and the paramadbhuta, the paramadbhuta vaibhava, the parama part, that's in Brahma and in the other gods, because it's beyond, practically speaking, their ability to comprehend. How can they comprehend? It's very interesting to think when you just contemplate that. It's because a person who, when a person has a particular kind of sanskara, a particular kind of nature that's developed and throughout their lifetime, it makes them incapable of seeing certain things. This is quite a psychological, platitude. It's a psychological truism that everybody knows, that if you have you see or you don't see according to your capacity to see or not to see. And sometimes if you're so blinded by a particular point of view or a particular way of understanding or a particular way of being, then you just don't see the things that are right in front of your face, even when they're to anybody else they would be self-evident. This is quite true. And the opposite is also, people see things that aren't there when they have that kind of conditioning. So Brahma, Ishvara, and these people, they have a particular kind of conditioning. If people's principal state of consciousness is to see Aishwarya, people's mentality, most people are in the mentality where Aishwarya is the important thing. Fame, glory, riches, these are the important things. And they can't see even somebody, the reality of love and the importance of love, because they've become so conditioned by the necessity to do other things. This is what's wrong with our world. The thing with our world, everybody wants to, have more and more. They don't know how to live simply. So then it goes on. Evam purva purvam kaimutyam gyeyam. So this is, he's saying here that kaimutyam means that it goes without saying. Right? It's like it goes without, the purva purvam, for each one of these stages, from the Radha to the gopis to the Brahma and so on, that they, that they don't comprehend what went before. It goes without saying that they can't. It's beyond their ken. So now he's going on with another one. Because time is gone, I wasted a lot of time today. But I'd rather enjoy doing that. I hope you forgive me. But we'll start because he's got a yadva here. So from a yadva means that it's a new subject, that we're going to give an alternate explanation. So tomorrow we have an alternate explanation of Paramadbhuta Vaibhava. Okay? So today is preparatory for tomorrow. Yes. You have a question? Yes, go ahead.
From before, already.
Yeah, you were going to ask. Yeah.
Could you speak about this? Also, a related story with the Dukhi Krishna Shamananda Prabhu and his guru.
Yeah, that's true. That's in Shamananda. That's actually probably a better case, because in there, Maharaj was objecting, and legitimate objection. That Bali Maharaj was and Shukracharya was the god of the demons. So rejecting him seems like good advice because he's giving you because Shukracharya is giving you bad advice. The guru of the demons is giving you bad advice. Huh? But Shamananda's guru was Hridaya Chaitanya. So Hridaya Chaitanya was in the Sakya Rasa, they say. Hridaya Chaitanya, he was a disciple of Gauridas, the Gauridas Pandit. So Gauridas Pandit, his temple is in Kalna. And Kalna is across the river from Shantipur. So if across the Bhagirathi from Shantipur. And he has one of the first Gaur-Nitai deities there, which is very interesting. Because, think about it, that how did Gaur-Nitai deities come about? We have Gaur-Nitai deities everywhere, but Gaur-Nitai deities, when that began. So Gauridas was one of the first people who had Nitai Gaur deities, and Gauridas is considered to be one of the Gopals. He was Nityananda's associate and was in the mood of Sakya Rasa. So his disciple Hridaya Chaitanya was also a Sakya Rasa. So Shyamananda came to him. So this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about exactly. That Shyamananda came to him, and Shyamananda, didn't know the subtleties of different bhavas and different rasas, and so in the beginning he was just accepting the Sakya Rasa. But when he came to Vrindavan, he became and was associating with the Goswamis and with Narottam and Srinivas and so on. In the Vrindavan mood, immediately he became aware of the glory of the Madhurya. So when he started to become deeply involved in Smaran and so on of the Madhurya Lila, then that event took place. I imagine, often when they tell these stories, you take these stories as a kind of a. We don't really think about them in depth, but if you take it from a real human point of view, if you think that he was troubled, he was in a position of anxiety. He was disturbed by the fact that he had, and this is what happens. This is always what happens. It always happens when you go from one particular stage to another. There's some anxiety there because you're always leaving something behind. And often the thing that you're leaving behind is not a bad thing. But in order to progress, in order to follow the inspiration and follow the insights that are being given to you by divine grace, you have to leave one thing behind and go on to the other thing. And when you're doing that, you're in a position of anxiety. Your mind is troubled. You're not necessarily taking that very easily. My guru says do like this, and for instance, I can give my own example. When I left ISKCON, for instance, I had a position of fairly, I was a sannyasi. I had great potential in ISKCON. If I was still in ISKCON, I would have been a guru for the last 30 years. But at that particular point, I was hearing from my Raganuga guru, Lalita Prasad Thakur. So I spent about quite some time. It took me almost a year to finally make the decision and to break away and to leave. In full knowledge, that I would be condemned, and a lot of friends would hate me. And it's actually that would happen. I would meet people who were very good friends in ISKCON, and they would despise me for having left. I made that decision with a great deal of trouble. Now, I didn't have any great, like Shyamananda, I didn't go into my meditation and have Radharani come to me, and put her foot on my forehead and leave an imprint of, a tilak imprint, of special tilak imprint. I didn't get that kind of special insight, let's say. But nevertheless, it's similar procedure. I could have done that. I just, at Jiva, right? At Jiva, there's this. Now, I'm not going to say, because I don't like these kinds of things very much. People who invent their own. I don't care very much. I'm basically, probably for my ISKCON training, I'm a parampara guy. I believe that you have to come in parampara. I believe in sampradaya. You have to, how can I reject Rupa Goswami? If I never, this is what I'm saying about Guru Tattva also. Your guru line. But you have people like Jagadguru Kripalu, you see, Jagadguru Kripalu, where is he getting everything from? He's practically everything he's doing is getting from Gaudiya Shastra. He's taking Ujjal Nilmani Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He knows these things very, very well. but there's no sampradaya. There's no acknowledgement. How can you not acknowledge the parampara? Nobody, the famous saying by Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton said that if I have seen far, it is because I stood on the shoulders of giants. A very good thing. So even Isaac Newton, who is considered to be the father of modern physics, of the science of physics, even he doesn't say that I invented it myself. He's saying there was a tradition there that I took advantage of, and he presented some new insights. So we can do that. There's no question. There's no evolution. But for one thing is that don't go. If you're going to, if there's a real evolution, if there's a genuine evolution, if it's bhakti, related to bhakti, if the evolution of bhakti is really related to bhakti, then you will acknowledge the parampara. You'll acknowledge the previous acharyas. How can you not acknowledge the previous acharyas? How can I, acknowledge anything about bhakti without acknowledging the acharyas who came before me? And I include Srila Prabhupada. I would never ever dream. There's so many people who left ISKCON and became, so-called Raganuga Bhaktas and took initiation from somebody else, and then they become, inimical to Srila Prabhupada. And I can't tolerate that. I can't tolerate those people. So you wouldn't even be talking about Raganuga Bhakti if you hadn't come through that line, if you hadn't gotten that grace. So just, so Prabhupada said something that you don't like. Or Prabhupada said this or said that, And so for that you're becoming inimical to him. You can't do that. It's just like with your own father. This is the same principle that I was talking about the Guru. Your father and mother gave birth to you. You can't change that. Your father might be a drunk and an idiot, and you may know that he's a drunk and an idiot, you see. But he's still, you can't deny that he's the one who, is your father. So, and because of that, he's actually a manifestation of God, because your life came through that channel. So how can you deny it? Right? If you deny it, then that means you're going to have a psychological problem. If you deny it, if you can't accept that reality, then you're going to always be fighting against yourself. You're going to be fighting against your own reality. You're going to be fighting against your own life, like that. And so, if you think that you can have bhakti without acknowledging even the small gurus, the minor gurus, who played a role in that, that's why a Vaishnava is humble, because he recognizes at some point that Guru Tattva is everywhere. That Guru Tattva is not just, my Guru has 8 billion disciples, that therefore, I've got the greatest Guru in town, and therefore, that makes me really something special, you see. But everybody else is a fool and a nonsense and nobody. It doesn't work like that. In some respects, that's what the story in the Bhagavatam about the Avanti Brahman and 24 gurus, that's what that's all about. It's about when you get to a certain stage, of insight, then Guru Tattva starts to manifest everywhere.
As a sadhaka, how do you share with others your realization of the manifestation of Guru Tattva?
Well, the thing about it is that you don't start at the end. This is too many people, I find, especially people who are kind of in the Buddhist Advaitavadi camp. They're always talking about this kind of nirvana state or something, and they're always seem to be pretending that that's where they are, and that they've understood everything because everything all is one and so on like that. So we can talk about a very elevated state of consciousness and so on, but sadhaka, it's true, you follow discipline, and Guru means discipline. So you stay within the discipline of the Guru Tattva for as long as, I'm talking about a situation that may come up. It doesn't necessarily come up. You have to finish your business at one level before you go on to the next one. You know, people who are going flitting from one guru to another, they're not in a better position. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are wiser or following any higher truth. Quite often it means that they're just plain confused. You know, they're just plain confused. They're not progressing. They're just going from one side to another. You know, it's like their attention span is short, and so they, you know, I got there, now I don't, now this. You know, it's kind of like it's not a progressive path, but it's a shifting sidewards type of thing. So you really the best principle is to, you know, follow a discipline for as long as it's meaningful, as long as it's workable. That's what it means. I mean, obviously, like the story of Shyamananda was meant to show, that the story of Shyamananda means that before you, and the story of the gopis also, and the Sarva Dharman Parityajya also, because the whole story of the Bhagavad Gita really is about rejecting gurus, right? That's really what the story of Bhagavad Gita is. Arjuna is saying, I don't want to kill my guru. Drona and Bhishma. And Krishna says, kill your guru. That's what Bhagavad Gita is all about. Sarva Dharman Parityajya. What does that mean? Because Krishna, and the point of the Bhagavad Gita, you see, because the Bhagavad Gita, if you look at it allegorically, all right, now mostly we don't look at it allegorically, but think of the Bhagavad Gita allegorically. And it's so correct that the Gita should be looked at allegorically, because it's based on an Upanishad verse. The Upanishad verse says that there's a chariot, that's the body, and the horses are the senses, and that the chariot driver is the buddhi, is the intelligence, and that the jiva is the passenger in the chariot. So there you have the passenger in the chariot is Arjuna, and Krishna is the intelligence. Why is Krishna, how do I say that Krishna is the intelligence in Bhagavad Gita? Because he's always talking about intelligence. And what does he say? Danami buddhi yogam tam. He says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Esha te bihita sankhye buddhi yoga imang sranu. So the whole thing, and if you look at the second chapter, always talking about buddhi, buddhi, buddhi. So the point, Krishna, is that this is exactly what I'm talking about, but the higher intelligence coming from within. That's the ultimate authority. That's what the Bhagavad Gita is telling you.
So if you don't listen to this, then you lie to yourself.
What?
If you don't listen to your...
Yeah.
You lie to yourself because of ego.
Yeah.
Because of what
Yes, exactly. So we need to be purified in order to properly understand. So therefore, you take the external guru, the guru that the Bhagavad Gita doesn't deny, because Arjuna externally surrenders to Krishna as guru. That's also part of the whole thing. Tadvidi pranipatena. That's also there in the Bhagavad Gita. But the guru, the external guru, functions as a guide to your internal guru. He helps you to understand, to clear your mind, to clarify things, so that you know which path to follow. But then when you get that guidance, but at some point, you can't even. I mean, to what extent can the guru give you guidance? The guru can give you general guidance, but can he give you specific guidance to particular things? Like, should I take this job or not take this job? Should I buy this car or not buy this car? Should I go to India or not go to India? You know? I mean, you can ask your guru, but he's not going to help, I'm telling you. You know? He may say, yes, do it. Of course, that's, in a minor thing that can happen. But when the decisions start getting more and more complicated, you can't even explain them half the time. So the process that takes place of accessing your intelligence is something that, as an independent individual, as a fully manifested, self-regulated and spiritually mature individual, you can't always be depending on somebody else, like, Guruji, what did I have to cross the street, should I cross the street here or cross the street there? That's the sign of a person who's not particularly mature. So the Guru is guiding you to spiritual maturity, not to infantilism. This is one of the things that we see so often. So that people are talking about how gurus infantilize their disciples. But that's completely corruption of the Guru Tattva. Okay. More, you want to discuss more?
This is one experience that I had with my ISKCON Guru. As soon as I went through to the other side,
The other
parents, yeah.
Cross to the other side. The dark side.
I went there a few times, Bhakti Vibe of Puri Maharaj,
Yeah.
and this was the end, because I shouldn't go there now. But I was so attracted. I never felt so much attraction toward any devotee. And then I couldn't then listen. No, don't go there. Prabhupada didn't want that.
Yeah.
And then I met also Sri Narayana Maharaj to then Diksha from him. I couldn't stay there, block this door, like a sheep.
So that's exactly right. So sometimes it's easy. Like for the gopis, it was easy. They heard the flute. They didn't stop for a second. So they're glorified because it was easy for them. Because for them, even though the problem was so great, and that's what's always emphasized about the gopis, that as young girls, you have to think that these are young girls. They're young girls. They're just newly married mostly. They're in the Indian extended family tradition. The social norms are very, very tight, way tighter than we could even imagine in the West today. But even so, even in the West today, we still have social norms that we, to become a Hare Krishna back in the 60s and 70s, this was, but even then, I would say that for us, for me personally, it was not a hard decision to make. I'd already more or less discarded the attachment to the conventional life, so becoming a devotee was easy. But even so, for most people, that would be a drastic step to take. So the drastic step. So for the gopis have the most drastic step to take, and still they do it. Their attraction to Krishna is so strong. Krishna's flute has grabbed their mind so intensely that they just drop everything, and it's like the rivers flowing to the sea. They torrents, like a current of like the Ganges flowing from the mountains and down to the sea. That's the way they went to Krishna. So sometimes it appears to be easy like that, and sometimes it's more difficult. So for Shyamananda, I would say it was probably a little more difficult, and because then there was tension afterwards, right? So he knew, he probably recognized, he probably knew beforehand that his guru was not going to appreciate this. That his guru had given him, something that was valuable, that meant a lot to him, in Sakya Rasa and so on, and now he was going off into, he was going over to the dark side of Madhurya Rasa. And so he had to come back, and there was a tussle, there was an argument, and ultimately there had to be, some intervention from higher authorities like Jiva Goswami. Okay, let's stop.